Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the EEB Group Investors Conference Call discussing 2012 results and significant developments, Calida Special Report. My name is Sandra, and I will be your operator during today's conference call. At this moment, all participants are in a listening-only mode, and your lines will be muted. At the end of today's presentation, we will have a questions and answers session. Please note that this conference is being recorded. Now, I'll turn the call over to Mr. Rafael Salamanca. Mr. Salamanca, you may begin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2012 EEB Empresa de Energía de Bogotá Results Conference Call. Head of the Grupo Energía de Bogotá. We have today with us attending the call Mr. George Pinzon, CFO of EEB, Adolfo Herrín, CEO of our Peruvian subsidiary, Calida, and Juan Felipe Gonzalez of the Investors Relations Office. My name is Rafael Salamanca, and I'm part of the EEB Group Investors Relations Office. We'll start this call with some remarks from our CFO. After that, we'll present a summary of the group and its business strategy, and finally take a look at the main significant developments of 2012. We'll continue with last year's results and key financial indicators analysis and explanation. To finish, we will have a close look at Calida, its business strategy, and its financial results. By the end of this conference call, we will be pleased to take your questions and/or comments. Now I'll turn the call over to our CFO, Mr. George Pinzon.
Thank you, Rafael, and good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to present our CEO, Mrs. Sandra Fonseca's apologies. She couldn't be here today because the city's mayor summoned her to go to a meeting with the president. I would like to start by taking a look at the recent developments of the group, and maybe most relevantly for you, refer to the vision of the future according to the new administration of the company and the group. The market, and in general all of our incumbents, had witnessed the transformation process during the last few years, which has allowed us to transform from a local to an international participant, from having all of our investments in a single field, the energy segment, to becoming a regional leader in the electricity and natural gas sectors, from being a reduced presence player in the capital market space to become one of the major equity and international debt issuers in Colombia. For us, this starting point is a big challenge. To take advantage of this solid base to project the group to a new era of great challenges, Mrs. Fonseca has mentioned to the media a figure that represents how big this challenge is. We expect to invest almost $2,775,000 during the next 5 years, with great loyalty to our successful business strategy, energy transportation. During the following years, we will continue working to position ourselves as the first energy transportation group on a regional level. For this purpose, we will continue growing in regulated natural monopolies through a growing strategy with regional scope. You already know that we're participating on an important bidding process in Chile to build and operate transmission assets. But this is not the only opportunity we're assessing. We believe there are interesting opportunities to grow the transportation and distribution capacity of gas in Colombia and Peru, and to increase our share in the electricity markets in Colombia, Peru, and Central America. However, because of the dynamics of the regional markets, our participation has been focusing on developing local projects in the countries we operate. We believe that our energy interconnection projects will become more important during the next few years, and our group should definitely be ready to take advantage of the opportunities this might bring. But we also believe that our company should expand the range of potential countries, and therefore we will do our best to identify opportunities in some countries within the region in which we are still not present and which have appropriate regulatory conditions. All these are part of our principles and our development strategy. As you can see, the challenges ahead are big, but undoubtedly not inferior to our company's capabilities. That's why we are confident we will reach them for the sake of our shareholders, of the people from Bogotá, and in general for the benefit of all our groups of interest. Thank you and have a nice day. Now Juan Felipe Gonzalez from the Investment Relations Office will continue with the presentation.
Thank you, George. I'm in charge of covering 3 points, starting with a general view of the Grupo Energía de Bogotá and walk through its strategy. We will continue with a look at the significant developments of the Grupo Energía de Bogotá, and I will finish before turning the presentation over to Calida, with the key financial results and consolidated indicators of the Empresa Energía de Bogotá. Next, please. As you know, the Grupo Energía and its controlled and non-controlled companies have a strategic focus in energy markets, particularly in the transportation and distribution of energy with a regional scope. We have today important investments in natural gas and electricity in Colombia, Guatemala, and Peru. As George mentioned, our company is participating in a bidding process to build and operate electricity transmissions assets in Chile. Our focus is natural monopolies. We are developing a controlled business growth strategy This means that most of our investments will be channeled through the companies in which Empresa Energía de Bogotá has control. We have ambitious projects in execution, which is not common in public service companies. As our new CEO mentioned, the business plan is valued in $2.7 billion during the next 5 years, of which 1.7 million are already being executed. They're not just on paper. We operate in a capital-intensive business, and without a doubt, the access to the capital markets is an important feature. We think that the group and its controlled companies have adequate access to the capital markets, both local and international, and the facts are self-explanatory. The EEB and TGI debt renegotiation and the recent 144A bond issuance by Calida just confirm what I've just mentioned. Obviously, for us it's a requisite of utmost importance to have a solid regulatory framework, and in every country in which we operate, we consider there is a solid and adequate regulatory framework that guarantees clear game rules for the investors. And without a doubt, there is an experienced team at a corporate level at every subsidiary, with an ample knowledge of each of the markets in which we operate. To end this message, another characteristic of our strategy, or the Grupo Energía de Bogotá strategy, is our participation in electricity and natural gas, which is also something not that common in a public services company listed in the public securities market at a regional level. We participate in all the electricity chain and all the natural gas chain, with the exception of exploration and production. That is a business in which we don't and will not participate because it is against our strategic business focus that are the natural regulated monopolies. Let's take a quick look at the significant developments, starting with the Empresa de Energía and the Grupo developments. Remember that during the last year's first quarter, the Empresa de Energía was awarded 3 auctions in Colombia to build and operate central transmission assets, mainly formed by 3 substations and the associated transmission assets. Having a combined value of $140 million, we can positively mention that these projects are advancing well. 2 of them have an execution rate of more than 45%, and the most complex and the most expensive ones of the substations has 19% execution rate by the end of 2012. These projects should be starting operations within this and the next year. Also in February this year, the board appointed the new CEO. We have reported in a timely manner her resume, and without a doubt her experience is very important, and her experience in the energy sector is very important, and will be very valuable in the near future of the Empresa de Energía de Bogotá. Keep in mind that the board appoints the CEOs through a 4-year contract, which may be extended if the board decides to do so. In one of her first speeches, Mrs. Fonseca mentioned the value of our business plan. The value of this business plan is close to $2.7 billion, and $1.7 billion of this plan is on projects already in execution. Investments that haven't been dispersed, particularly Trexa in Guatemala, the project of electricity transmission, Calida in Peru, the natural gas distribution, and Contugas, the transportation and distribution of natural gas. In March, by the end of March, the shareholders' meeting approved the profit payout of approximately 400,000 million Colombian pesos, which represents a dividend of 43.96%. I believe it's important to highlight here that this value represents 96% of the Empresa de Energía de Bogotá legally distributable profits, which reaffirms the policy the Empresa de Energía de Bogotá has been following of paying out 100% or close to the highest level of profit year after year. The shareholders' meeting decided that for the minority shareholders, the dividends should be paid in one single installment. This will happen by the end of May, and for Distrito Capital, our controlling shareholder, there would be 2 equal payments, one on June 20th and the other on November 27th. Additionally, last year we received good news from the rating agencies. 2 of the 3 rating agencies assigned international investment grade rate to the bonds issued by EEB. The one left is Standard & Poor's, and we're confident about this one. It is also worth mentioning that we are working on the process of convergence to international laws. We expect, according to the schedule and the regulation issued by the Colombian government, we should present the first financial statements with international accounting standards by 2015, and for these financial statements to be comparable with those of 2014. It's also worth mentioning that EEB is participating in a bidding process. As George mentioned earlier in the presentation, for transmission assets in Chile, the estimated capex by the Chilean government for this type of projects is close to $60 million, and we believe that by mid-June we will know the results of this process. In relation with TGI, there are 4 significant developments. The first one has to do with the debt management that took place in the first quarter of last year by this company, which was really successful and allowed the company to reduce the financing costs of its bonds from 9.5% to 5.7%, and also, along with this process, there was a renegotiation of the intercompany loan that TGI has with EEB. I think the key message is the annual savings that the company estimates to be around $38.3 million, and that started showing last year, but they will be seen more strongly this year, in 2013. TGI started the last phase of its ambitious expansion process, which is Cusiana Phase 2, with an installed capacity of 110 million cubic feet, and with this, the company finished its expansion plan, which allowed TGI to increase its transportation capacity 54%, and it's currently operating. Also, by the end of December of last year, the Commission of Electricity and Gas Regulation issued a resolution related to the periodic review of tariffs. TGI estimates that the new CREG's maximum tariffs imply a 10% rise in the revenues, and this would be reflected on its 2013 financial statements. Finally, TGI also obtained investment rate grade from 2 out of 3 rating agencies, which rate its international bonds. Regarding Contugas, it's important to highlight that by the end of last year, the project showed an execution rate of 70%, running accordingly to the timetable scheduled by the company. That execution rate of 70% implies an investment of $180 million. The company estimates that the project will be in full operation by the third quarter of this year. The capital structure for this project, as you remember, will be 25% equity contributions from shareholders that have already been disbursed and 75% debt. The debt resources are being funded with a syndicated loan of $215 million, and the disbursements will be made according to the project needs. Last year, we created a new company called EEB IG, a Guatemalan company, an EEB subsidiary, 100% owned by EEB, and it's basically oriented and focused on consulting advice and execution of electric projects. The good news here is that this company was assigned last year in Guatemala projects close to $40 million, which are projects basically focused on electricity transmission to connect some electricity producers, particularly sugar mills, to the national transmission network. Regarding Trexam, our transmission project in Guatemala, we estimate that this project has a capex of $377 million and will start operating in the fourth quarter of 2013. The capital structure for this project is 50% equity and 50% debt, and its commanding shareholder, Empresa de Energía de Bogotá, has already paid the majority of the equity. Let's take a look at the key financial results. What you see in this slide is a significant increase in the operating income. However, it's important to highlight that the operating profit didn't grow at the same rate as the operating income, and this could be explained by several factors. Basically, what happened with the natural gas transportation explains why the operating profit didn't grow at the same rate that the operating income, and we have here a series of costs related to maintenance and insurance premiums for the natural gas transportation business. And there's also costs that are one-timers. We're talking about the fees related to the liability management process and debt restructuring performed by TGI last year. So some of the operating costs are specific events that we expect will not have to happen again during this year. Finally, it's also worth noting the net profit performance. Is the net profit really high, close to 700,000 million Colombian pesos, representing an increase close to 127% compared to 2011. And this can be explained by two events. First of all, 2011 base is atypically low, because as the markets already know, it's related to an anticipated dividends payout by the end of 2010. So 2011 profits only reflect the dividends determined by the few last months of 2010 in the non-controlled companies. So that's why the 2011 base is relatively low, but also in 2012 net profit we had the positive impact from the operating profit increase and the increase of the dividends from investee companies because of better operating results, mainly from Ingesa. Additionally, the net profit increase can be explained by the behavior of the foreign exchange balance account. Remember that almost 95% of this company's debt is set in US dollars, and this combined with the Colombian peso revaluation had a positive impact on the non-operating figures. That also explains a good deal of the results, and this foreign exchange difference is not distributed as per company policy. Let's continue, Rafael. To finish my presentation, I would like to mention the company's debt indicators. We have a leverage ratio by the end of 2012 of 1.88 times and interest coverage ratio close to 9 times. In both cases, the explanation for the improvement of the leverage ratio and the interest coverage ratio is because of two reasons. The first one for the leverage ratio is because of the decrease in the value of the debt, in spite of a higher debt contracting value, in Calida's case, basically because of the peso revaluation, and in the second case, the improvement in the interest coverage ratio is explained by a company's EBITDA performance. EBITDA has been steadily and significantly growing. This will end my presentation, and I will turn the call over to Calida.
Good morning. In the next slide, we are showing a general view of Calida, where we would like to tell you some more about Calida's business. Calida has the concession for the natural gas distribution for Lima region and Callao province. This concession was awarded in 2000 for a 33-year period and could be renewed until 2060. That way, we would be talking of a 60-year-long concession. The concession area in Lima region is 21,700 square miles, and as a reference compared to a country, this is equivalent to half of Belgium, with a population of 10.4 million, Lima being one of the 30 biggest cities around the world. Now, talking about Lima and Callao, Lima has 35% of Peru's population and 50% of the gross domestic product. Our distribution capacity to date is 255 million cubic feet per day, and for this first quarter, we are finishing the expansion of the distribution system to 420 million cubic feet per day. This entire project has already been executed, and at this time, we're simply checking everything before starting operations. We have a diversified client base, and we'll show you in the next slides how the business diversifies its clients in generators, industries, vehicles powered by natural gas, and commercial and residential customers. And finally, in this slide, we'll show we have two shareholders, Grupo Energía de Bogotá, the commanding shareholder with 60%, and Promigas with the remaining 40%. In both cases, they're companies with extensive experience in the distribution business and the region. On the right-hand side of this slide, you will see 2012 results where we have an income of $370 million for 2012 with EBITDA of $74 million and with 103,700 customers by the end of the year. At the bottom of the slide, you can see the map where it's located, and you can see that we have in Lima region the main networks, but we also have a few facilities in the south region of Lima where the electric generators are located. In the next slide, you'll see we currently have almost 2,500 kilometers of steel and polyethylene pipes for gas in Lima, and they have availability and continuation rates of practically 100%. This entire infrastructure is virtually new, requiring minimum maintenance costs. The business is receiving distribution revenues, and 46% of these revenues are from signed contracts, mainly with the electric generation companies and the biggest industries having with them signed contracts for a period of 17 years on average, and many of these contracts will end in 2033, at the same time the concession finishes for the gas distribution in Lima. And for all the cases, when we talk about the tariff, we calculate it with a yield rate of 12% of the capex and the operating costs. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the demand by client type, and you can see how it has been increasing starting in 2009 to 2012. And at the right-hand side, you can see how this volume and this income are distributed among the four types of customers I have just mentioned, which are the electric generators, GNV, which has the natural gas for vehicles, industrial, residential, and commercial, and the installation service that, in spite of not being related to the distribution of natural gas, is an income we receive for the service of making the internal installations for our customers. Regarding the significant developments shown in the next slide, in 2012, the number of connections by the end of the year, as I mentioned before, was 103,723, which represents a 62% increase compared to 2011. And you can see this at the bottom left-hand side, and this also represents 3 times the volume reached in 2010. For this year, we expect to reach 165,000 connections, and to date, we are reaching 116,000. To reach this goal, and to also reach the expansion of our gas distribution system, at the bottom right-hand side, you can see our CapEx investments of $96 million for last year, and how with this investment, we expect to reach the goals we set for this year. Finally, in March this year, we issued international bonds for $320 million to meet the debt obligations that we had to date for $197 million, and finance in part the 2013 and 2014 CapEx. I will explain some more about the bond issuance later. Taking a look at the financial results, you may see in this slide how our revenues have been increasing from 2010 to 2012, almost have doubled. How EBITDA goes from $29 million in 2010 to $64 million in 2012, and we also are showing the adjusted EBITDA margin, which reflects that we are close to a 50% margin. Adjusted EBITDA is EBITDA divided by the margin, not including the pass-through that we have because of the distribution business. At the bottom, you can see the equity, how it has been increasing through the years, and how the profit has more than doubled from 2010 to date. Regarding financial indicators, we can see in general terms Calida's improvement in its ability to meet its debt and interest obligations in terms of net debt EBITDA. What we see is a ratio coming down from 3.1 in 2010 to 2.4, and it shows the company's growth and strengthening regarding its income and the EBITDA it generates. Finally, the next slide shows how Calida successfully issued a bond for $320 million. On March 21st this year, we tapped the international capital market with a 10-year bond issuance under a 144A format, and before this issuance, we had received an investment grade rating from the 3 rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Fitch and Moody's. It's also important to note that this issuance, for the investment grade rating we've obtained, got the lowest coupon in history for a Latin American corporate issuer, and we closed the transaction with a coupon of 4 3/8 or 4.375. We received offers up to 8 times the issuance value, and as I mentioned, these resources would allow us to pay for the obligations we had and finance our growth for this and next year. On the right-hand side, you can see the details of the transaction and how the bond issuance was distributed by investor type and by region. With this, I turn over the call to the conference call administrator.
We thank you for your attention. Now we start the question and answer session. For everyone having a question, please press star and then 1 in your touch-tone phone. If you are using a speakerphone, you would have to pick up the handset before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you have any questions, please press star and then 1 on your phone. We have Mr. Jaime Pedraza from Carvajal with a question. Please go ahead with your